Hey there, Night Owl. Before we dive into the damp, muddy world of medieval archers and their gloriously miserable mornings, I've got a favor to ask. If you're enjoying this strange little journey through history with a side of sarcasm, give this video a like. Share it with that one friend who thinks they'd make a great medieval hero, and don't forget to subscribe because tomorrow's tale might just feature leeches, lice, or something even worse. And while you're at it, uh, drop a comment below. Tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I read every single one. Yes, even the one from that guy in Wisconsin who listens at 3 a.m. in his garage. You're not alone here. We're all half asleep, half curious, and fully invested in surviving the past. Together. Now let's get uncomfortable. Imagine waking up in the year 1357. Congratulations. You're not dead. Yet. The bad news? You're also not inside a castle or a feather bed. You're in a field tent held up by 3 sticks and one bad decision, snoring in sync with 2 other lads who smell like soup gone wrong. Outside, the rain is practicing horizontal violence, your bowstring is soaking wet, and the porridge is sentient. You're now a proud archer in Lord Alderwick's levy, a job that requires bravery, back pain, and the kind of stubborn pride that says, sure, I'll draw a 6-foot warbow before breakfast. No glory, no poetry, just you. Your bow, and the goose that guards the archery targets with more aggression than your commander. You haven't even stretched yet, and your spine already sounds like it's auditioning for a haunted house. Welcome to your new morning routine. Mud in your boots, fire in your arms, and dignity nowhere in sight. And this, dear listener, is only the beginning. So, you've survived the awakening, barely. Your bones hurt, your blanket is wetter than soup, and the only thing resembling a good morning is the fact that no rats chewed on your face last night. Progress. But before you can even blink the crust from your eyes, there's a cold realization smacking you harder than your bunkmate bronze elbow to the ribs. It's training time. Again, the flap of your tent groans in the wind like it too regrets signing up for this campaign. You stumble outside into a world aggressively wet. Not just raining, no. This is medieval sideways rain, the kind that gets into your boots, your ears, your soul. Your tunic clings to you like betrayal, and the only dry thing in sight is probably the sarcasm on Grenda's face, the camp cook who greets you with a ladle of something gray and smoking ominously. Is it porridge? Is it roofing tar? You don't ask, you just eat. That ladle might be the warmest part of your day. Then comes the call, a shriek, really, more nasal than noble. Sir Audric, the teenage nephew of Lord Alderwick, has decided, again, that sunrise is the perfect time for military discipline. He appears, as always, wearing his feathered helmet, which somehow always looks both soggy and smug. He smells like rosewater and terror, and his idea of leadership involves yelling "bows up" before half the archers have even remembered how elbows work. And you obey. Not because you respect him, but because the last guy who sassed back is now on latrine duty for the foreseeable future. With your longbow still damp from yesterday's mist, you line up next to Bronn and Elric. The goose is already there, patrolling the targets with its usual murderous confidence. You swear it nods at you like it's ready for round 2. Your arms lift. Your back screams. The string digs into your fingers. Knock! Draw! Loose! Audric bellows, as if his words can replace muscle memory or stave off tendon damage. A dozen arrows fly. One finds a target, one finds the goose. It squawks, flaps furiously, and launches itself into the fog like a feathered vengeance spirit. No one laughs. Not because it isn't funny. It absolutely is. But you're all too tired to risk the effort. Every ounce of energy is being used to keep your knees from giving up and introducing your face to the mud. Now, about the bow itself, this beast of a thing. It's not a weapon. It's a medieval gym membership with 0 amenities. 6 feet of seasoned yew pulling at 100 pounds of resistance and whispering sweet nothings to your rotator cuff. The string alone has already skinned a chunk off your forearm, and your fingers are blistered into tiny, throbbing regrets. Why do you do it? Pride? Pay? The promise of glory? No. You do it because not doing it means starvation. Or worse, more porridge. By midday, your shoulders are tighter than a miser's coin pouch, and your bow feels heavier than it did this morning. Not because it changed, but because you did. The repetition wears you down. The damp seeps into your joints. You're not training for fun. You're training for war. And war apparently smells like old onions and despair. You retreat to camp, hoping for food. Grenda is waiting with a pot of something cabbage adjacent, and a glare that suggests one more complaint will result in that pot being repurposed as a helmet. You eat in silence. Around you, the other archers, hardened, hunched, half asleep, chew like they're negotiating with the food. No one talks about quitting. Quitting isn't a word here. It's a luxury for people who can afford new shoes. And then there's Malin. Malin is the oldest archer in your unit, maybe 50, maybe fossilized. No one knows for sure. He speaks in riddles and smells like damp firewood. Once he told Elric, "Never trust a man whose bow is cleaner than his boots." What does it mean? You have no clue, but it feels important. Malin doesn't aim anymore. He just sort of looks at the wind and lets go. The arrow flies, hits the center of the target, and he walks away like nothing happened. Legend says he once shot a French knight in the eye from 2,000 yards away because the man owed him money. You believe him. You have to. Back at camp, you sit on a stool that wobbles like it's trying to escape your body weight. Your boots steam from the fire, and your socks are auditioning for a fungal horror story. You rub beeswax into your string because Darren, grumpy, bearded, and possibly part tree, grunted it into your lap with a, "Don't say I never gave you anything." That's affection here. The afternoon drill changes, moving targets. Audric, in his infinite wisdom, ties Linen to a stick and tells Elric to run like a French invader. Elric runs like a drunk goose, which ironically makes it more authentic. You shoot. You miss. Audric blames your stance. Malin mutters something about cursed fletching. You say nothing because you're saving your breath to survive the next 5 minutes. At dusk, you help Elric retrieve arrows. Most are embedded in wood. One is in the goose carcass. Again, you don't ask questions. You just nod, hum the "Please Don't Let Me Die" tune, and pretend this is all normal. By nightfall, the campfire is the closest thing to comfort. You sit around it, boots off, eating something Grenda calls spear pudding. No one asks what's in it. You don't want to know. Malin starts telling stories, battle tales, siege memories. Once, he says, they ran out of arrows and used spoons. Flattened them with rocks, fired them through the visor. Night dropped like a sack of pride. You don't know if it's true. Doesn't matter. Feels true. Audric walks by, helmet drooping in the fog, mutters something about discipline. Elric mimics him in a squeaky voice and gets elbowed by Grenda. With the spoon. It still had pudding on it. The fire crackles. Someone starts humming. You lie back, spine cracking like an old floorboard. Everything aches. Everything's damp. And somehow, that's fine. Tomorrow there will be more drills, more rain, more arrows, maybe even another goose. But for now, you're just a medieval archer wrapped in smoke, steam, and shared misery. And weirdly, you're okay with that. Morning does not arrive. It attacks. One moment, you're tangled in a damp wool blanket, dreaming of dry boots and edible breakfast. The next, Braun mistakes your ankle for a rock and steps on it with the kind of enthusiasm only a man with 0-foot awareness can muster. You groan. Not because it hurts, which it does, but because the sound confirms you're still alive. Unfortunately, the fog outside is so thick it might qualify as a liquid. You can't see the fire, sigh, though you can definitely hear Grenda yelling at someone for burning the oats again. Your breath comes out in little puffs of regret, and your tunic, which has never fully dried since last Tuesday, clings to your skin like it has abandonment issues. You pull it over your head, wincing as your spine does its morning impression of a snapped lute string. Elric is already up, muttering to himself about whether porridge is sentient, and if so, does it hold grudges? You believe it might. Yesterday's bowl blinked at you. Today's task? Hill shooting, which is exactly as joyful as it sounds. Climb a mud-slicked slope, plant your feet in soil that shifts like guilt, and then shoot down at targets while trying not to faceplant into a sheep pad. It's less tactical precision and more slippery chaos with weapons. The hill waits like a smug mountain goat, daring you to try. Braun goes first. He slips, swears, and somehow manages to hit a target anyway. Show off. You climb after him, your boots squelching with the sad resignation of a man who knows this hill wants to eat him. Each step is a gamble. Will the ground hold? Will your knee give out? Will your arrow finally snap and demand better working conditions? You reach the top, panting like an asthmatic blacksmith. Audric, ever radiant in his now entirely limp feathered helmet, shouts instructions from below, sounding more like an angry goose than a noble. Aim! Breathe. Loose, he squawks, and you obey, partially out of habit, mostly because ignoring him leads to more drills. Your arrow flies. It curves like it's trying to avoid embarrassment, sails past the target, and lands somewhere in the fog with a satisfying thunk. You hope it hits something useful, like Audric's pride. No time to dwell. Next round, you reload, re-aim, try again. Every shot is a small war between you and your own joints. Your shoulder feels like it's been used as a door hinge for a siege tower, and your fingers might as well be sausages at this point. Cold, stiff, and increasingly useless. Between volleys, you huddle near a fire built on a rock ledge that's one wrong step from becoming a medieval sled ride into oblivion. The flames are mostly smoke, and the smoke is mostly tears. Elric sits beside you, cradling his bow like it just broke up with him. Bronn is chewing on something that might be meat or might be a particularly chewy root. He doesn't seem to care. You talk in half murmurs, the way soldiers do when they're too tired to pretend they're not terrified. Malin shows up like a shadow with bones, offers a grim nod, and says, "The hill's not the enemy. It's just honest about hating you." You nod back. That checks out. Then, chaos. A horn blares. Short, sharp. Not the drill time sound. Not the Audric's about to lecture us on honor sound. This one's new. People scramble. Arrows fall. Elric drops his bow. Bronn stands, alert for once. Malin doesn't move. He just sighs like he's seen too many of these moments and none of them ended with cake. It's a scout. He's mud-streaked, wide-eyed, and very much missing part of his boot. "Bandits," he gasps. Half a mile out, 30, maybe more, armed. For a heartbeat, no one moves. Then everything moves. Your blood goes cold, colder than it already was. Bandits aren't knights. They don't follow rules. They don't march in pretty lines. They steal, stab, vanish, and leave you with one less friend and a lot more nightmares. You grab your gear, your bow, your cracked bracer, your mismatched arrows, none of which look remotely ready for combat. You slide down the hill, slipping twice, catching yourself once, and arriving in the camp like a question mark. Audric is barking orders, trying to sound brave. His voice cracks. No one mentions it. Lord Alderwick appears, wrapped in a cloak that probably costs more than your entire life. He's old but not soft, his eyes narrow. "Form the line," he says. You do. 12 archers, including you. Including Elric, who still hasn't stopped shaking. Including Bronn, who mutters finally like he's been waiting for this moment since birth. You line up near the outer ditch, bows raised, breaths held, hearts racing in chaotic sync. And then you wait. The bandits arrive like a bad rumor, fast, ugly, and louder than they should be. Ragged armor, stolen weapons, shouts that sound more like barking than battle cries. You don't think, you shoot. Your first arrow misses, your second one doesn't. It hits a man in the thigh, he drops like a sack of tax evasion. Around you, chaos reigns, screams, mud, steel. Someone's on fire, you hope it's not one of yours. The goose flies overhead, squawking like a war god. You shoot again. And again. No time to aim, no time to breathe, just pull, release, pray. An arrow zips past your head too close. You drop behind the ditch, reload, pop up, fire. Malin's beside you now, calm, quiet, deadly. He hums a tune, something you don't recognize but immediately start humming too. You glance left, Elric is alive. Eyes wide, arms trembling, but he's still standing. You glance right. Bronn is laughing. Of course he is. The bandits falter, a few retreat, a few don't. You shoot at the ones who don't. After what feels like a lifetime, the horn blares again. Twice. Retreat signal. Not yours, theirs. They're running. You don't chase, you just collapse. Knees to mud, face to hands, breathing like you've never tried it before. The world spins. Your bow drops from your hands. Your fingers won't uncurl, but you're alive. Malin claps a hand on your shoulder. "First fight's the worst," he says. "Second one too. Third ain't much better." You nod. In the distance, the sun finally pushes through the fog, lighting the battlefield like a truth no one wants to admit. You're not a hero. You're not special. You're just not dead. And in this world, that's enough. For now. The battlefield is quiet now. Not silent. Never silent. But quiet in that eerie, hollow way that comes after screaming stops and the last arrow finds its final mark. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring louder than any war horn. You're still kneeling in the mud, body trembling, breath hitching, trying to figure out whether the damp on your cheeks is rain or sweat or something worse. You survived. Again. Barely. Your hands are locked around your bow, knuckles white, like letting go would mean admitting what just happened. Around you, the others begin to stir. Braun is limping, but still standing, dragging a cracked arrow behind him like a wounded trophy. Elric hasn't moved. He's staring at his hands like they betrayed him. Malin, of course, is already walking the field, checking the fallen with the casual disinterest of someone choosing fruit at a market. "Get up," Malin mutters as he passes. "If you're breathing, you're not done." It takes effort, more effort than it should, to stand. Your legs protest, your shoulders scream, but you rise anyway because collapsing in a puddle feels like something you can do later. Right now, there's still work to finish. The camp is battered, tents torn, fires doused by trampling boots, equipment scattered like a child's angry tantrum. The goose is back. Somehow, miraculously alive and already pecking at a bandit's boot like it's demanding taxes. Sir Audric is nowhere to be seen. You find him behind a water barrel, trying very hard to look like he was strategizing. His feathered helmet has finally given up. It flops sideways like it too is embarrassed. Lord Alderwick, on the other hand, is calm, blood on his cloak, mud on his boots, but calm. He doesn't thank anyone, doesn't congratulate you, just says, "Secure the perimeter." Like that's the same as saying, "Nice work not dying." You obey. Again. The bodies are mostly bandits. Some you recognize from the charge, some you don't. One is barely more than a kid, maybe 14, eyes open, face slack, sword still clenched in a hand too small for war. You look away. You have to. You find one of your arrows in a fallen tree, splintered and cracked. You pocket the shaft anyway. Materials are scarce. Memories are worse. As the adrenaline fades, something new settles in. The ache. Not just the bruises or the blisters, but the deep, grinding fatigue that seeps into your bones and makes you wonder how many more fights like this you can take. Malin walks past again, hands you a rag soaked in something herbal. "For your hands," he says, "and your nerves, probably." You nod. Wipe the sweat. Pretend you don't notice your hands still shaking. Night creeps in fast. The fog has thinned, revealing a sky smeared with stars, but it's not comforting. Not tonight. The campfire is rebuilt, smaller this time, flames flickering like they're afraid of being seen. The archers gather around, not talking much, just sitting, staring, existing. A few tend to wounds. Braun's knee is wrapped in cloth so red it might as well be ceremonial. Elric finally speaks. "I hit one," he says, voice thin. "Don't know if he lived?" No one answers. No one has to. Dinner is a disaster. Grenda somehow turned carrots and fear into something resembling stew. You eat it anyway. Taste is not a factor, just heat and survival. You'd eat the table if she told you it had protein. Sir Audric reappears, clearly trying to reassert himself now that the danger's past. He paces dramatically, delivering a speech about valor and honor while avoiding eye contact with anyone who saw him cowering. At some point he says, "Discipline is our shield," and Braun snorts hard enough to spill his stew. Nobody corrects him. Nobody applauds either. The fire burns lower. Someone hums. Probably Malin. The same tune as before, slow and steady like a lullaby written by someone who's seen too much. You lean back, feel the heat on your face, and let the crackling of the wood drown out your thoughts. But your mind refuses to sleep. You keep seeing that kid, the bandit with the too small sword and the wide, dead eyes. You tell yourself he chose this, that he was part of the attack, that he would have killed you if given the chance. But the truth is, he looked just like Elric. War doesn't feel glorious, it doesn't feel heroic, it feels cold, dirty, loud, and then suddenly too quiet. And what you carry back isn't medals or praise, it's memories. It's the sound of arrows finding flesh, the weight of silence after the scream, the smell of iron in the air and mud in your teeth. You shift in your seat. The fire pops. Someone, Grenda, maybe throws another log on. Sparks leap upward like they're trying to escape. You envy them. Sleep comes eventually, not willingly. It drags you down like a swamp, pulling your limbs into restless sludge. Your straw mat feels like a bed of broken promises. You curl up, bow at your side, one boot still on in case of another surprise. The wind whistles through the cracks in your tent, and every shadow looks like movement. You dream of nothing. When morning returns, it's with no warning, just light, bright, indifferent light. No bandits this time. Just sore muscles and a dozen new bruises. You sit up slowly, stretch carefully, wince dramatically. Elric is already up, face pale, eyes tired. He nods at you. "You think they'll come back?" he asks. You shrug. "If they do, we'll be here." It's not bravery. It's not confidence. It's just fact. Because that's what you are now, a medieval archer. And no matter how muddy the ground, how heavy the bow, or how haunted your sleep, your job is the same. Draw, aim, survive. You rise slowly. Every joint creaks like it's being asked for one favor too many. Your back feels like someone stuffed gravel under your skin, and your legs aren't legs anymore. They're just two long complaints. But you stand anyway, because that's the deal. You don't get to rest. You get to wake up, get dressed, and pretend yesterday didn't nearly kill you. Elric is already at the fire, poking the embers with the sort of focus usually reserved for bomb defusal. Bronn is sitting on an overturned bucket, tying his boots with the care of a man who knows one of them might explode. Malin, naturally, is sipping something from a tin cup that may or may not have started life as an oil container. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. Breakfast is exactly what you feared. Charred oats with a splash of rainwater, generously seasoned with ash and hopelessness. Grenda slaps a bowl into your hands and moves on, already yelling at a new recruit who had the audacity to ask what day it was. The answer, according to her, is whatever day you stop whining. You eat. You don't chew. You just accept. Today is inspection day. That means weapons clean, uniforms straight, and no visible blood, your own or someone else's. Lord Alderwick's steward is making the rounds, and he's the kind of man who checks under tunics for regulation stitching. You'd laugh, but last time someone did, they were reassigned to digging latrines. With a spoon, you grab your gear. Your bow is still damp, still heavy, and still judging you. You rub it down with a scrap of cloth that used to be a sock, then go to work on your arrows. They don't match. They never do. One is too short, one's crooked, and one has fletching made from what you're pretty sure is a chicken's tail. Doesn't matter. They just have to fly. Mostly straight, mostly on command. You line up with the others as the steward approaches, his boots cleaner than your entire existence. He sniffs as he walks by, like the smell of camp offends him personally. He pauses in front of Bronn, who somehow has blood on his collar again. Bronn just shrugs. Hunting, he lies. What did you hunt? The steward asks. Dignity, Bronn replies. You snort. The steward glares. You go silent. Once inspection is done, you're herded toward the practice field, if it can be called that. It's mud, mostly. A few scattered straw targets and one barrel that's now more arrow than wood. The goose is back, of course, already hissing at everyone within 10 feet. You suspect it's a reincarnated warrior cursed into feathered form. Today's drill? Formation shooting. You stand shoulder to shoulder, 12 archers in 2 rows. Sir Audric paces in front, waving his rod of discipline, like a conductor who just discovered music. He's yelling again. Something about timing, posture, honor. No one's listening. You're too busy trying not to sink into the mud. Knock, he shouts. You knock. Draw. You draw. Loose. You loose. Arrows fly. Most hit the targets. A few hit other things. One bounces off a shield and lands in Grenda's stew pot. She doesn't flinch. She just ladles around it. Sir Audric, to his credit, doesn't flinch either, but he does look paler every time the goose lunges near. Then comes the worst order of the day. Running drills. You groan collectively, like a choir of pain. Running in formation, in armor, with bows. It's not training. It's punishment wrapped in humiliation. You start jogging in a line, trying to avoid tripping over Elric's uneven pace or Bronn's ridiculously wide strides. The mud sucks at your boots. Your breath comes in sharp bursts. Your bow slaps against your back like it's trying to escape. Malin, of course, keeps pace effortlessly. He's not breathing hard. He's humming. Again, you finish the lap and collapse near the fire, where Grenda tosses you something hard and vaguely bread-shaped. Lunch, she says. It tastes like wood and secrets. Afternoon brings another surprise. Armor fitting. Someone had the idea that the archers should start wearing padded gambesons for extra protection, which sounds nice, until you try one on and realize it weighs more than your regrets and smells like it's been used to clean stables. You put it on anyway. You're now slower, sweatier, and making noises every time you move that suggest you're either possessed or falling apart, possibly both. As evening approaches, the sky shifts from gray to threatening. Rain begins again, not heavy, but persistent, like it's just checking in to ruin the mood. You gather around the fire, steaming like overcooked vegetables. The stew is slightly better this time. Maybe Grenda lost her taste buds in the war. Someone starts singing. Not well, but with effort. It's a drinking song, but no one has ale. so you pretend. Elric clinks his tin cup against yours. It's filled with water and despair. Malin tells a story. This one about a siege where they used sheep as decoys to draw out snipers. Worked like a charm, he says, until the sheep figured it out. You laugh. You shouldn't. But you do. Because in this moment, soaked, sore, slightly stewed, you feel something dangerously close to peace. Not comfort. Never that. But something else. Solidarity, maybe. Or just the knowledge that at least you're all miserable together. The fire crackles. The rain hisses. The stars don't show tonight. Probably too embarrassed. You lean back, eyes half closed, body aching in places you didn't know had names. And just before sleep drags you under again, you think, if tomorrow's worse, fine. You'll still be here. Covered in mud, wrapped in wool, bow in hand, tired, cranky, alive. And somehow, that's enough. By now, your body has fully accepted that pain is just part of the package, like your boots, your bow, and the ever-present background hum of Malin's off-key humming. You wake up, not with surprise, but with the low groan of a man who knows exactly what brand of suffering the day will bring. And today brings patrol duty. It's not glamorous, it's not heroic, it's walking. A lot. Through mud, through forest, through puddles that are suspiciously warm. And all while trying to look alert enough that your captain doesn't assign you to night watch again. Because night watch means missing dinner. And even when dinner is a turnip stew that smells like despair and onions, you still want it. Grenda hands you a chunk of bread before you head out. It's hard enough to be classified as a weapon in 5 kingdoms, and honestly, you might use it as one. Bronn takes his and immediately bites into it like it owes him money. Elric sniffs his and tucks it away like a squirrel saving for the apocalypse. Your squad today is small. You, Bronn, Elric, Malin, and a new recruit named Tav. Tav's about 15, face full of freckles and optimism that'll probably get knocked out of him before sundown. He's excited. You are not. But you remember being like that once, briefly, before the lice. You head out at first light, the sky a pale gray bruise above the trees. The forest is quiet, too quiet, which should be peaceful, but really just makes everyone nervous. Birds aren't singing, no wind, just the soft crunch of boots and the occasional thud of Bronn stepping on something unidentifiable. Tav keeps asking questions. Have you ever seen a troll? No. Do you think bandits use magic? No. Is it true Malin once killed a man with a spoon? You pause. Possibly. Patrol means checking the perimeter, watching for signs of movement, and mostly just hoping nothing actually happens, because when something happens in a forest, it's rarely a picnic. You find tracks first, boot prints that aren't yours, too fresh to ignore. They lead off the main path into thicker woods where the trees lean in close like they're eavesdropping. Malin crouches, studies the prints. 5, he says. Maybe 6. Heavy step. Rushed. Not ours. That's all you need to hear. Weapons out, bows ready. Tav looks like he's trying to remember if his arrow goes in pointy end first. You move quietly, as quiet as 5 tired archers in damp armor can manage. Which is to say, not very, but it's enough. You come across a clearing, flattened grass, signs of struggle, a torn satchel. Blood. Not fresh, but not old either. Ambush, Malin mutters. Someone hit a supply run. You scan the trees. Nothing moves, not yet. But the air has changed. It's heavier, charged, like a storm waiting to break. Bronn points. Smoke. Distant. Thin. Rising between the trees like a lazy ghost. You follow it, creeping now, hearts thudding, arrows knocked. The smell hits first. Burnt cloth, charred wood, and something meatier. You reach the source. A small cart, overturned, blackened. Whatever was inside is gone. Whoever was driving it isn't anymore. Their boots are still there. That's all. Tav gags. Elric turns away. You force yourself to look, not because you want to, but because someone has to. Same bandits? Elric asks. No, Malin replies. Worse. You don't ask what he means. You don't want to know. The rest of the patrol is tense. Every snapped twig feels like a warning. Every gust of wind sounds like footsteps. You circle back toward camp as the sun begins to dip and the sky bleeds orange across the treetops. You're tired, dirty, more paranoid than when you left. You make it back. Barely. It's quiet. Too quiet. Turns out 2 others didn't return from their patrol. No one says it, but everyone's thinking it. Bandits, or worse. Lord Alderwick calls a meeting. Not everyone's invited, just enough to feel official. Sir Audric, of course, is there, trying to look like he belongs. Grenda Audley is there too. You assume because she controls the morale more than anyone else. The orders are simple. Double the watches, reinforce the northern path, and if you see anyone unfamiliar, don't ask questions. You volunteer for the late watch. Not because you want to, but because Tov offers first and you don't trust him not to fall asleep standing up. You take Elric with you. He's still jumpy, but he's learning. The night is long. The stars are clear finally, but you don't look up much. You're too busy watching the tree line, listening, breathing slow. Every now and then, Elric mutters a prayer under his breath. You don't stop him. Sometime past midnight, something moves. Not much. Just a flicker at the edge of vision. You raise your bow, heart pounding, finger twitching, but nothing comes. You stay like that for an hour. By dawn, your legs ache and your eyes feel like sandpaper, but you're still upright, still watching. Grenda brings morning stew. It's terrible, but you eat it anyway. Tov joins you, looking tired now. Good. He should be. He asks what you saw. You say nothing, and that's the part that worries me. Because in the woods, nothing doesn't mean safe. It means not yet. You'd think, after the patrol, the sleepless night, the half-burnt stew, and that one weird noise in the bushes that still hasn't been explained, you'd get a break. Maybe a half day to sit, dry your boots, scrape the mud off your soul. But no, because this morning, the horn sounds before sunrise, and nothing good ever follows that sound. Turns out Lord Alderwick has visitors. And by visitors, we mean knights. Real ones, with clean armor, actual horses, and the kind of faces that haven't been punched by weather, war, or Grenda. They ride in like they own the road, because technically they do. Their banners flap in the wind, their swords sparkle in the early light, and their horses smell like they've been fed better than most of the camp. Everyone lines up. It's not optional. Sir Audric is practically vibrating with excitement, adjusting his helmet like he thinks today might be the day someone notices him. Spoiler, they don't. You stand with your unit still crusted in yesterday's dirt, trying not to look you haven't bathed in a week. Elric leans over and whispers, "Do you think they're here to take us to a better post?" "No," you reply, staring at the polished boots of one knight. "I think they're here to give us new ways to die." Because these knights, they aren't reinforcements. They're recruiters. Battles brewing to the east. Rumors of a siege, a big one that needs archers. Lots of them. And guess who just got promoted from patrol duty to cannon fodder? Lord Alderwick gives a speech. It's rousing, in the same way that falling into a ditch is surprising. He talks about honor, about service, about how every arrow shot by your hand is a blow against tyranny. Then he gestures dramatically at the knights and says, "Volunteers will be rewarded. Brave men step forward." No one moves. For a second. Then Bronn steps forward. You don't know why. Maybe boredom. Maybe he just really hates latrine duty. Then Malin steps forward, not out of enthusiasm, more like inevitability. And then Elric. Shaky, pale, but there. You sigh and step forward too, because if your friends are going to get shot at, you might as well be standing beside them when it happens. The knights nod. One of them, a man with a face like it's been carved from disapproval, starts reading off names. You're in the third group, which apparently means you'll be heading out tomorrow at dawn. That gives you roughly 24 hours to say goodbye to your bad bed, your worst food, and the goose that still insists on hissing at you every time you pass the practice field. The rest of the day is prep. You clean your gear. Again, not because it makes much difference, but because it's something to do. You tighten the string on your bow, check your arrows, rewrap the cracked leather on your bracers. Grenda hands you a packet of dried something, her version of a travel snack. You don't ask what it is, you just thank her and pretend it smells edible. That night, the fire is quieter. No songs, no stories, just the sound of packing, sharpening, and quiet prayers. Even Malin's humming has stopped. You sit with Elric. He's trying to carve something into his arrow shaft. A mark, maybe. A name. A reminder that he was here, in case he doesn't come back. You scared? He asks. Terrified, you answer. He nods, doesn't ask anything else. Bronn is unusually serious. He's oiling his bow, face set. You've never seen him like this, not even when he got into that fist fight with the merchant who tried to sell him a blessed turnip. Tov appears briefly. He's not going. Too young, they said. Too green. But he hands you a charm, a bit of string and bone and hope. For luck, he mumbles. You tie it to your belt. Not because you believe, but because someone does. Morning arrives like a punch to the face, cold, sudden, and unforgiving. You eat a final meal, oats of course, and line up with the others. The knights give the orders, the wagons are loaded, the horses snort impatiently. As you march out, you glance back. The camp looks smaller than it did yesterday, like it knows you're not coming back the same, if you're coming back at all. The road ahead is long. The knights ride ahead, giving orders, discussing strategy. You walk with your unit, mud already clinging to your boots, bow slung over your shoulder, the weight of everything unspoken pressing down. But there's one thing no one can take from you. Not the mud, not the nobles, not even the gods of war. You know your place. You're not a knight, you're not a lord, you're an archer. And when the walls rise and the drums beat, it'll be your arrows in the sky. Fast, silent, and sharp as the truth. And that, somehow, is enough. The road east is long, muddy, and lined with regret. The kind of road that chews on your boots, tugs at your soul, and reminds you every 10 minutes that you're definitely not getting hazard pay. You've been marching for hours, maybe days. Time doesn't move normally when your legs are doing the thinking. Your feet are numb, your knees click like bad hinges, and your back feels like it's storing secrets you never agreed to keep. The knights up front ride at a leisurely pace, of course. Their horses clip-clop like a lullaby of arrogance, while you and your fellow archers trudge behind like peasants dragging nightmares. You're too tired to talk, too sore to complain, too cold to care. The forest blurs past, a wall of wet trees and even wetter silence. Elric breaks first, not physically, just out loud. "Why do they always pick us first?" he mutters, adjusting the strap on his quiver for the 15th time. "Because we don't have a choice," you say, without looking up. "That makes us reliable," Bronn snorts. Reliable's just another word for expendable. You can't argue with that. Malin walks at the edge of the line, his eyes always on the tree line, humming softly again, something low, slow, and oddly comforting. No one tells him to stop, no one ever does. Eventually, you reach the outskirts of a town, or what's left of one. Burned houses, broken carts, a well that's collapsed in on itself like it finally gave up. The smell hits first. Smoke, rot, and the sharp bite of old blood. The knights slow, one gestures with his gauntlet. Set camp, 2 hours, no fires. That's the whole order. You find a spot near a tree stump and collapse against it. Your boots come off with a sound that can only be described as emotional release. Grenda's travel packet, dried something, makes a reappearance. It tastes like regret and chewiness, but it's food. Sort of. Elric sits beside you, eyes scanning the ruins. Bandits? Or worse, you say without emotion. Because by now, worse is just part of the options list. You're not told why this place was chosen. But as night falls and the sounds of owls and wind take over, you start to understand. It's a bottleneck, a natural funnel between two ridges. Strategic, if you don't mind dying in a funnel. That night, no one really sleeps. You lie on your back, staring up through twisted branches, the stars mostly hidden behind clouds that feel like they're watching. You hear something, far off, like hooves or thunder. Maybe both. Malin leans over and whispers, "It'll be tomorrow." You don't ask how he knows. Morning arrives heavy and reluctant. The sky hangs low, gray and sullen. Knights are moving early. Orders are barked. Archers are called to the ridgeline, your team included. You hike up the hill, slipping in the mud, fingers numb around your bow. The ridge overlooks a narrow valley. Trees line the far side. Quiet now. You take your position behind a low wall of stones. Bronn next to you. Elric on your left, Malin on the end, where he prefers. Then you wait. The fog rolls in first, thick, hungry. It crawls through the trees like it owns the place. Then shapes. Riders, slow, purposeful. Not knights, not peasants. Something in between. Armor made of scrap, swords drawn, flags of black and red. Raiders. They don't charge, not yet. They just watch. A knight rides up behind your line, his voice sharp and polished. "Do not fire until ordered." That's fine. You wouldn't waste an arrow yet anyway. These aren't amateurs. They're waiting for something. Then a horn. Not yours, the enemy's. It cuts through the fog like a blade, and everything snaps into motion. Shouts, movement. Horses charging, men screaming, and then the order comes. Loose. You rise, draw, and fire. Your first arrow hits a shield. The second buries itself in someone's thigh. The third, gods know where it lands. Doesn't matter. You keep going. Draw, aim, loose. Repeat. Your fingers are raw. Your bow creaks with each shot. The air is filled with the hiss of arrows and the cries of war. Elric lets out a yell. Not fear, not pain, just raw effort. His arrows fly faster now, his hands steady, his eyes burning. You almost smile. Then the line breaks. They're climbing the ridge, too fast. You grab a new arrow, fire into the chest of a man already halfway up the slope. He falls, but others take his place. Braun curses beside you, draws his dagger. Malin doesn't stop shooting. One raider reaches the top. You're too slow. He's on you. You duck, roll, your back hitting the cold earth. He swings. Misses. You stab upward with the broken shaft of an arrow, right into his throat. He gurgles, drops. You scramble up, eyes wild. Elric is still standing. Barely. Braun's fighting off two at once. Malin has switched to a short sword, somehow still humming. Then more horns. But this time, yours. Reinforcements. Knights charge down the hill from the rear, catching the enemy in the middle. It's chaos. Blood, mud, steel. The air smells like copper and panic. You keep firing, one shot, another, then nothing. You're out of arrows. You reach for your knife, but it's over. The raiders retreat. What's left of them? Limping, crawling, dragging the wounded. The field is yours. For now. You fall to your knees, hands shaking, throat dry. Malin claps you on the shoulder. Good grouping, he says, like this was just target practice. Elric laughs, a wild, shaky laugh that sounds more like survival than joy. Braun drops next to you, wiping blood from his face. Still think we're expendable? Elric asks him. Braun nods. Absolutely, but damn, we're good. And you are. Not perfect, not heroes, but archers. Alive, for another day. The sun doesn't rise. It drags itself into the sky like even it's had enough of this war. You wake up with dried blood on your cheek and dirt in your teeth, and for a moment you're not sure if you're alive or just haunting yourself. The battle is over, but the aftermath has teeth of its own. Victory, if you can call it that, tastes like smoke and iron. Your bow lies beside you, splintered near the grip, a crack you didn't notice during the fight. Probably because you were too busy not dying. Elric is curled up nearby, one boot still on, one boot missing, probably eaten by the mud. Braun is snoring so loudly it might count as a threat to the peace. Malin? Nowhere in sight. Of course. You push yourself up, muscles protesting, spine sounding like someone walking across old wood. Your ribs ache with each breath. Your fingers are raw, and your legs feel like they've been used to anchor a ship. But you're breathing. That's something. Camp is a mess. Half the tents are either flattened or burning in slow motion. A few knights move about, giving orders no one listens to. Most of the archers are silent, crouched around small fires or huddled together like survivors of a shipwreck. Because that's what this is now, a floating wreck of what used to be an army. Grenda shows up with breakfast, if you can call it that. A ladleful of something that used to be vegetables. Maybe. She doesn't speak. Just hands out bowls like she's dealing cards at a table of cursed gamblers. You eat, slowly, carefully. Your stomach isn't sure it wants food, but your brain is whispering threats if you skip another meal. Malin reappears like mist. He sits beside you, silent for a minute, then passes you a new bowstring wrapped in oiled cloth. Yours won't last the day, he says without looking. You nod. Thanks. Keep the old one, for memory. You're not sure if that's sentimental or just supply conscious. With Malin, it's both. The knights call a meeting, though calling it that is generous. They gather the remaining units, what's left of them, into a circle and announce the next step. Reinforce the eastern bridge before the enemy regroups. There's no applause, no cheers, just the collective sound of morale dropping off a cliff. You and the others are assigned to the front vanguard. Because of course you are. Because the last time you weren't on the front line was never. And if there's a suicidal mission involving rotten planks, river crossings, and the possibility of fire, archers are apparently the first on the list. You march. Again. This time it's colder. The wind bites harder. The rain isn't falling, it's aiming. You pull your cloak tighter, adjust your quiver, and tell yourself it's only a few more miles. A few more arrows. A few more days. The bridge isn't much of a bridge. More like an idea. Wooden planks, half sunk, lashed together with rope that might actually be old shoelaces. Beneath it, a river churns, angry, swollen, eager. One look and you know, if you fall, you're not swimming out. The plan is simple. Hold the bridge until reinforcements arrive. You don't ask when that is. You set up on the far bank behind a low wall of stone and discarded crates. Elric finds a spot with a good view, eyes scanning the tree line. Braun is already digging in his heels, muttering that if he's going to die, he wants it to be on land, not in a glorified bathtub. Malin? already tying knots into his arrows, humming some tune that makes your skin crawl just a little. The first wave comes at dusk, fast, screaming, screaming. Small group, testing your line. You fire, no hesitation. The first arrow drops a scout mid-stride, the second slices past someone's shoulder, the third misses. You reload. Repeat, it's not elegant. It's not epic, it's just work. They fall back. You don't cheer, because you know what's next. The real assault hits just after midnight. They come from the water, from the trees, from shadows that shouldn't move the way they do. Torches light the edges of the fog, silhouettes emerging like nightmares with swords. Braun yells, "Here we go!" And then it's all sound and smoke and blood. You fire until your arms go numb, until your fingers bleed, until you can't feel the bow anymore, only the weight of what's coming next. Elric is beside you, breathing hard, chanting something under his breath. A prayer? A curse? Both? You don't know when Malin disappears. One moment he's there, then gone. You hope he went hunting. You hope he comes back. Your quiver runs dry. You switch to knife. One raider makes it over the wall. Young, fast, too fast. You grab a rock, swing. It's not graceful, but it's final. The dawn arrives, slow and red. The enemy is gone. For now. Their dead litter the bank. Yours, fewer than expected, but still too many. The bridge holds. Barely. You sit against a crate, breathing smoke. Braun slumps beside you, a cut across his temple. Elric is leaning on his bow like it's the only thing holding him up. Someone brings water. It tastes like wood and metal. You drink anyway. Malin returns. He has a pouch of enemy arrows. Doesn't say how he got them, just hands you two. Yours now. You take them, because nothing's wasted. Because everything counts, and because somehow you're still here. The sun rises, reluctant and pale, casting a sickly light over the battlefield. The air is thick with the stench of blood, sweat, and smoldering wood. You sit amidst the remnants of the night's chaos, your fingers raw from the relentless grip on your bow. Around you, the moans of the wounded mix with the distant cries of carrion birds. Elric is beside you, his face smeared with dirt and blood, eyes staring blankly ahead. Braun is slumped against a broken cart, his chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Malin, ever the enigma, is tending to a wounded comrade, his hands steady despite the carnage. The battle was won, they say. But at what cost? The bridge is held, but the price paid in flesh and spirit is immeasurable. You can't help but wonder if the victory was worth the toll it exacted. As the day progresses, the camp stirs with a grim determination. Reinforcements arrive, bringing with them fresh supplies and weary smiles. The wounded are tended to, the dead are mourned, and preparations for the next engagement begin. You find solace in the routine, checking your equipment, assisting with fortifications, sharing a meager meal with your comrades. The camaraderie forged in the crucible of battle offers a semblance of comfort amidst the uncertainty. As night falls, you gather around a small fire, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the faces of your fellow archers. Stories are shared, laughter erupts, and for a moment the horrors of war are forgotten. But as you lay down to rest, the weight of the day's events presses upon you. You close your eyes, seeking refuge in sleep, knowing that tomorrow brings new challenges, new battles, and the unyielding march of war. Yet, amidst the darkness, a spark of resilience remains. You have faced the storm and endured. And as long as you draw breath, you will continue to stand, bow in hand, ready to face whatever trials lie ahead. The morning comes slowly, like a wound healing under frost. You wake with a groan, not from nightmares, but from the stiff ache that's settled into your bones like a tenant that refuses to move out. The camp is quiet, not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that hums with tension just beneath the surface. Everyone is waiting for something. No one says it, but you feel it in the way the boots move slower, the glances linger longer down. The fires are built a little closer together. You're still at the bridge, barely fortified, barely intact. The engineers work through the night, young lads with more courage than sense, hammering stakes into the mud, reinforcing the barricades, setting up signals for the next potential wave. You join them, because doing something feels better than sitting still. Even if your muscles scream, even if your hands blister, at least it keeps your mind from drifting back to the faces of the men who didn't make it across the ridge. Elric finds you mid-hammer swing, holding 2 cups of whatever passes for coffee this far from civilization. He doesn't say anything, just hands you one and sits. His eyes are hollow, but not empty. He's seen enough now to understand, not just the chaos of battle, but the strange peace that comes after, the numbness, the silence, the guilt of survival. Braun shows up with a roll of bandages and half a smile. The healer said this was for your dignity, he says, slapping the cloth into your lap. You smile. It's not a big one, but it's honest. In war, honesty is rare enough to be worth something. Then, without warning, a horn sounds from the western path. Everyone freezes. It's not an alarm, it's not a signal of attack, it's the call for assembly. You and the rest of your unit gather in the clearing, like where Lord Alderwick himself rides forward, flanked by knights and scribes. He looks tired in a way that even polished armor can't hide. His voice, however, carries sharp and clear through the morning fog. The siege has begun, he says, and our orders are to reinforce the forward camp near Fort Greyline. No one reacts, not outwardly, but inside you all feel it. Fort Greyline, the edge of the map, the place where campaigns go to die. You're given 2 hours to prepare. That's more than you usually get. You spend them checking your bow, tightening your armor, and trying not to think about how many arrows you'll need. Tov, who somehow convinced someone to let him stay, brings you a satchel of rations and a proud smile. You tousle his hair, not because you're trying to be kind, but because you honestly can't believe he's still here. When you finally leave the bridge, you glance back just once. The planks look steadier now. The blood is mostly washed away, but the memories, they're permanent. The march to Greyline is long and brutal. Not because of the terrain, it's mostly flat, but because everyone knows where they're going. The silence is thick, conversations are clipped, the veterans walk like ghosts, the new recruits walk like they haven't figured out they're already in mourning. Halfway there, it starts to rain. Of course it does. You wrap your cloak tighter, shielding your arrows, counting each step like it might be your last. By dusk, the fort looms ahead. It's a wall of stone built into the side of a cliff, with towers that pierce the sky like broken teeth. Smoke rises from several sections, not from fire, but from kitchens and forges and the endless churning of siege preparation. The enemy hasn't arrived yet, but they're close. Everyone knows it. Inside, it's chaos. Soldiers yelling, carts rolling, animals braying, armor clanking. You're assigned a bunk in the lower barracks, if you can call it that, a wooden slab, a shared wall with the stables, and a draft that seems personally offended by your presence. Malin shows up hours later, dry somehow, carrying a scroll and a small flask. You're part of the gate crew, he says. You raise an eyebrow. What does that mean? It means, he says, taking a swig, we're going to be the first to see them coming. Perfect. That night, you don't sleep. You lie awake listening to the distant roll of thunder, or maybe drums, maybe both. Your mind replays every fight you've survived, every friend you've lost, every command shouted over the roar of chaos, and you wonder, honestly, how many more times you can do this. But when the morning horn sounds, you're up. You're dressed, you're ready. Because that's what archers do. Not because they love war, not because they're brave, but because if they don't stand, who will? You climb to the gate tower, bow in hand, eyes scanning the horizon, and there, on the distant hilltop, you see them. Shields, banners, fire. The enemy has arrived. The enemy has arrived. From your perch atop the gate tower, you watch as their banners crest the distant hills, a sea of colors and steel shimmering under the pale morning sun. The air is thick with anticipation, every creak of leather and clink of armor echoing the tension that grips Fort Greyline. You glance at Elric, his knuckles white as he grips his bow, eyes fixed on the approaching horde. Bronn stands nearby, muttering a prayer, or perhaps a curse, under his breath. Malin, ever the enigma, calmly checks his quiver, his face a mask of serene focus. The command comes, "Knock arrows!" A unified motion follows, the soft thrum of bowstrings pulled taut, filling the air. Draw, muscles strain, breaths held. Loose. A storm of arrows ascends, darkening the sky before descending upon the enemy ranks with deadly precision. The battle has begun. Wave after wave of foes crash against the fort's defenses, each repelled by a relentless barrage of arrows and the unyielding resolve of its defenders. The hours blur, a cacophony of screams, steel, and the rhythmic twang of bowstrings. As dusk settles, the enemy retreats, leaving behind a field littered with the fallen. Exhausted, you lower your bow, hands trembling from the day's ordeal. Elric leans against the battlements, his face pale but determined. Braun sits heavily, a gash on his arm hastily bandaged. Malin offers a rare smile, nodding in silent acknowledgement of your shared survival. Night falls, and the fort is eerily quiet. You find a moment of respite, huddled around a small fire with your comrades. Stories are exchanged, laughter tentative but genuine. In this fragile peace, you find solace, however fleeting. But as you lay down to rest, the weight of the day's events presses upon you. You close your eyes, seeking refuge in sleep, knowing that tomorrow brings new challenges, new battles, and the unyielding march of war. Yet, amidst the darkness, a spark of resilience remains. You have faced the storm and endured, and as long as you draw breath, you will continue to stand, bow in hand, ready to face whatever trials lie ahead. Morning drips into Fort Greyline like ink spilled across parchment, slow, heavy, and ominous. You rise stiffly, body aching from yesterday's siege, your hands swollen from gripping a bow for too many hours. The world is quiet, but it's not the good kind. It's the hush before something breaks. Elric is already awake, staring out over the ramparts, his jaw set like stone. There's a new line in his face this morning, just one, but it looks like it was carved with grief and fire. He doesn't say good morning. No one does anymore. Those words belong to a different life. You gather your gear, bow, quiver, blade, all still here, still functional. You move with muscle memory, not enthusiasm. Malin joins you wordlessly, pulling a piece of dried meat from his belt and chewing it with the grim focus of someone who doesn't really taste food anymore, just calculates the calories. Then the horns sound again, a different pattern this time. Short, sharp, urgent. Not an attack, a parley. You and the others are ordered to the front line, not to fight, but to stand ready. A display of force, they call it, as if weary archers with sunken eyes and borrowed armor could intimidate anyone anymore. Still, you line up, shoulders square, bows resting at your sides. Across the field, the enemy emerges. One rider, dark horse, red banner. He stops halfway between the lines, raising a gloved hand in some kind of mock greeting. Lord Alderwick rides out to meet him, flanked by two of his knights and one scribe trying very hard not to fall off his mount. The parley begins. You can't hear the words, but you see the body language, stiff, tense. No head nods, no laughter. It's not going well. Malin leans closer. They want to surrender. Not gonna happen, you mutter. Not today, he agrees. After what feels like an eternity, the riders turn back. Alderwick returns to the fort, jaw clenched, eyes darker than ever. You're summoned to the inner yard immediately. Inside, the plan is simple and insane. They've cut off the southern road, Alderwick says. No supplies, no reinforcements, but there's a convoy 2 days out. If we can break through the enemy's eastern flank, send a fast unit south, we can intercept it. Bring back food, arrows, medicine. If we don't, we starve. You already know where this is going. Elric raises his hand. You want us to go? Alderwick nods. You're fast, you're quiet, you've survived more than you should have. That last part feels like an accusation. The squad is picked. You, Elric, Malin, Braun, and two scouts named Ren and Kai. Young, fast, untested. The mission begins tonight. You prepare like soldiers do, efficiently, grimly, with the weight of what if pressing on every movement. You check your gear 3 times, not because you don't trust it, but because you know the forest won't forgive mistakes. At sunset, you slip through a hidden gate and vanish into the woods. The night is thick and wet, fog clings to everything, turning trees into ghosts and shadows into threats. You move in silence, every step practiced, every glance exchanged. The enemy lines are thin in the east. Lucky. Or maybe they're baiting you. You don't stop to wonder, you push forward, heart thudding, breath tight. By dawn, you're deep into the forest, a ribbon of mud and branches stretching behind you. The scouts lead, moving like whispers. You and Malin take rear watch, eyes scanning every bush like it owes you an apology. Midday brings trouble, a patrol. 5 men, armed, alert. You duck behind a fallen tree, breath held. Kai signals, we can take them. It's not really a question. Malin shakes his head. You nod, you're too close to the convoy's path to risk a fight. Too close to die stupid. So you wait, you listen, and you slip past them like shadows on stone. By nightfall, the scouts spot it. The convoy, 10 wagons, maybe more, guarded, but not heavily. They don't expect trouble here. Their mistake. The plan is brutal, quick. You hit them before dawn under cover of mist. Silent kills. Archers on the flanks. Disable the lead wagon, break the line, scatter them. It works. Mostly. Ren is wounded, arrow to the thigh. Malin carries him without complaint. Elric takes a sword across the ribs but keeps moving, jaw clenched so tight it looks like it might snap. You drive the wagons north, fast as the battered horses can manage. The road is rough, but the scent of smoke on the wind tells you Fort Greyline is still standing. For now. 2 days of hell. No sleep, constant watch, mud in everything. But you make it. The gates open like a blessing, and the cheer that erupts when the first wagon rolls in, it's not loud, but it's real. The kind of sound people make when hope shows up late, battered and covered in bruises, but alive. Alderwick clasps your shoulder, doesn't say thank you, doesn't need to. You sit beside the fire that night, watching flames dance in the eyes of men who were ready to die yesterday. Malin sips something strong. Elric is already snoring. Braun just grins. You did it. You made a difference. And tomorrow you'll fight again. But tonight, you sleep like someone who's earned it. The night after the convoy's return to Fort Greyline was a rare reprieve. A fleeting moment where the scent of roasted meat replaced that of blood, and laughter dared to echo within the stone walls. You and your comrades sat around a modest fire, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows on weary faces. Elric, nursing a bandaged arm, recounted tales of past skirmishes with exaggerated flair, drawing chuckles even from the stoic Malin. Braun, ever the jester, toasted to surviving another day without becoming a pincushion. But as dawn approached, the fortress stirred with renewed urgency. Scouts reported enemy movements, siege engines being assembled beyond the tree line, their silhouettes ominous against the morning mist. The respite was over. The storm was returning. You found yourself atop the ramparts once more, the familiar weight of your longbow a comforting presence. The enemy's preparations were methodical, their intent clear. They sought to breach Greyline's defenses, to crush its spirit. But you and your fellow archers had become the fortress's heartbeat, pulsing with defiance. As the sun climbed higher, the first wave advanced. Armored soldiers marched in tight formations, shields raised, eyes fixed on the walls. At the command, a volley of arrows soared, descending upon the attackers like a deadly rain. The front lines faltered, chaos rippling through their ranks. Yet, they pressed on, driven by orders or desperation. Hours blurred as wave after wave met the same fate, repelled by relentless arrow storms and the unyielding resolve of Greyline's defenders. The ground before the fortress became a grim tapestry of fallen foes and shattered equipment. Still, the enemy persisted, their siege engines inching closer, their determination undeterred. By dusk, exhaustion weighed heavily. Quivers ran low, arms ached, and the air was thick with smoke and tension. Yet, amidst the turmoil, a sense of unity prevailed. You fought not just for survival, but for each other, for the bonds forged in fire and blood. As night fell, the enemy retreated, their losses substantial. Greyline stood battered but unbroken, its defenders weary but resolute. In the quiet that followed, you looked to the stars, drawing strength from their distant light. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, you had endured. Dawn broke over Fort Greyline with a quiet tension. No alarms, no screams, no drums, just the eerie stillness of a battlefield holding its breath. You stood at the top of the eastern wall, boots caked in dried mud and blood, watching the smoke curl lazily from the remnants of yesterday's chaos. Below, soldiers moved like ghosts, their movements efficient but heavy, weighed down not just by armor, but by the weight of the inevitable. The enemy hadn't attacked again, not yet. They'd pulled back just before midnight, dragging their wounded and gathering their dead. Now they sat beyond the tree line, unseen but unmistakably there, regrouping, rearming, and probably planning something worse. Elric joined you, his arm now in a proper sling. "They're not done," he said, like he was reading your thoughts. You nodded. "Just letting us sweat, or letting something bigger roll into place." You didn't ask what he meant. You both knew. The next assault wouldn't be foot soldiers and battering rams. It would be fire, monsters, siege towers pulled by nightmares on hooves. Command knew it too. The higher-ups started pulling everyone to the center square. Veterans, scouts, cooks. Even Grenda was there, arms crossed, holding a kitchen ladle like it might still be useful in a fight. Lord Alderwick stood on the makeshift platform, looking even more worn than yesterday, but still somehow radiating that cold-blooded fire that had kept Greyline alive this long. "We hold the gate," he said. "Not just the stone, not just the walls. We hold the name. We hold each other. It was the shortest speech he'd ever given, and maybe the best. Afterward, the orders came in waves. Archers to the north wall, infantry to the breach zones, scouts to the tunnels. You and your team were told to rotate, rest 2 hours, then report back to the gate tower. 2 hours of sleep. It was a luxury and a trap. You lay in the barracks with your eyes closed, heart still pounding like you were in the middle of a fight. Malin snored softly in the bunk above. Elric sat sharpening a blade one-handed like it was a meditation. Braun was out cold, face down, drooling on a pillow that hadn't been clean in weeks. When the call came, you were already halfway to the door. You climbed the tower steps again, every one of them familiar now, each with its own creak and shift. The view hadn't changed. Smoke, trees, enemy campfires like distant stars. Then the drums began, slow, heavy, like they were being beaten by giants. And then you saw it. The siege tower, 1, then 2, then 3. Looming out of the mist like gods of war with wood and iron for bones, taller than the wall, taller than you ever thought was possible. And they were moving, toward you. You weren't given a speech this time. No horn, no rallying cry, just the order, bring them down. You knocked your first arrow with shaking hands, but the motion was practiced now. Muscle memory took over. You aimed at the ropes holding the front plank, the wheels creaking under the weight of armored death. Loose! A chorus of arrows flew. Some hit. Most didn't. The towers kept coming. Fire arrows. That was the next command. Malin lit your tips with a torch, his expression focused and calm, as if lighting siege towers on fire was just another Tuesday. The second volley caught. One tower flared up, flames licking its sides, spreading like hunger. You cheered, until you realized the other two had gained speed. The wall shook when they hit. The enemy poured out like hornets from a nest, armored and screaming, and full of hate. You dropped your bow, drew your blade, and joined the line. It wasn't a fight. It was survival in real time. You parried, you dodged, you screamed, you killed, and you kept moving, because if you stopped, you'd be under someone's boot in seconds. Elric was beside you, swinging with one arm and gritting his teeth. Braun had a broken spear in one hand and a rock in the other. Malin had vanished, again, but you trusted he was doing something incredibly useful and slightly terrifying. At one point, a firebomb landed near the gate. The heat hit your face like a slap. Wood cracked. Screams erupted. But the line held. Hours blurred into something less than time. Just movement, breath, blood, and grit. By nightfall, the towers were ash. The dead, both theirs and yours, covered the courtyard in a carpet of horror. But Greyline stood. Somehow. You sat with your back against the wall, hands trembling, mouth dry. Elric slumped next to you, eyes closed, not asleep, just drifting. Braun coughed. Well, he said hoarsely, that was dramatic. You laughed, and then you wept. Not from fear, not from grief. But because you were alive, and because, for the first time in days, the stars were visible again. The morning after the siege towers fell, Fort Greyline stood eerily silent. The air hung heavy with the scent of charred wood and blood-soaked earth. The once proud banners now drooped, tattered and stained, barely fluttering in the stagnant breeze. You sat atop the ramparts, your bow resting across your lap, eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. The enemy had retreated, but the tension remained, a palpable weight pressing down on every soldier within the fortress. Elric joined you, his arm still in a sling, his face drawn and pale. They'll be back, he muttered, his gaze fixed on the distant tree line. You nodded, the truth of his words settling in your gut like a stone. The enemy was regrouping, preparing for another assault. And this time, they would come with new strategies, new weapons, and renewed determination. As the day wore on, scouts reported unusual activity beyond the forest. The enemy was constructing new siege engines, massive trebuchets capable of hurling stones the size of oxen. The realization sent a chill down your spine. The walls of Greyline, though sturdy, had never faced such a threat. Preparations began immediately. Engineers reinforced the walls with additional timber and stone, while archers like yourself were assigned to new vantage points to counter the impending aerial assault. The atmosphere was tense, every creak of wood and clang of metal echoing like a death knell. That night, sleep eluded you. The distant thud of construction and the occasional flare of torchlight beyond the trees served as constant reminders of the looming threat. You found solace in the company of your comrades, sharing stories and laughter in an attempt to stave off the encroaching dread. At dawn, the enemy made their move. The trebuchets unleashed their fury, massive stones crashing into the walls with devastating force. The ground trembled beneath your feet, dust and debris filling the air. You and your fellow archers returned fire, aiming for the siege crews, but the distance made accuracy a challenge. Despite your efforts, a section of the wall gave way, creating a breach. The enemy surged forward, their war cries piercing the cacophony of battle. You rushed to the gap, joining the melee with sword in hand. The clash was brutal, the air thick with the scent of sweat and blood. Amidst the chaos, you spotted Malin, his robe stained and tattered, wielding a staff with surprising agility. He chanted incantations, summoning bursts of flame that engulfed the enemy. His presence bolstered your resolve, and together you pushed back the invaders. Hours passed, the battle raging on without respite. The sun climbed high, casting harsh light on the devastation. Finally, as dusk approached, the enemy retreated, their forces depleted and morale shattered. Cheers erupted from the defenders, a mixture of relief and exhaustion. That evening, you sat with your comrades, nursing wounds and sharing tales of valor. Elric, despite his injury, managed a smile. "We held them off," he said, raising a mug in salute. You clinked your mug against his, the sense of camaraderie a balm for your weary soul. Though the battle was won, you knew the war was far from over. But for now, you allowed yourself a moment of peace, the stars above a silent testament to your resilience. The morning after the siege ended was soaked in gold light, the kind of morning that almost tricks you into believing the war is over. Birds were actually singing. One had the audacity to perch on the very battlement where you'd loosed fire arrows just hours before. It felt like nature itself was mocking the chaos you'd survived. But you didn't trust it. None of you did. Elric shuffled out beside you on the wall, sipping from a dented tin cup filled with something that might have been tea or just warm rainwater. His sling was gone. His arm still hung a bit too loose at his side, but his grin was genuine, if tired. "Peace," he muttered, squinting into the sunlight. "Or a really well-dressed lie." You laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the sound of laughter still had power, like lighting a torch in a cave to prove the darkness doesn't own you. Inside the fortress, things were moving, slowly. Repair crews patched what they could, and the engineers, those miracle workers in grease-stained leather, began reinforcing the sections of wall that hadn't collapsed. Malin, somehow still alive and still untouched by soot or blood, had disappeared again. Word had it he was helping identify what kind of magic was left in the fallen siege towers, or maybe just looting them for ingredients. Bronn, on the other hand, had taken up guard duty at the southern gate, which was mostly an excuse to lean on a spear and catcall passing supply wagons. Everything should have felt safer, calmer, but it didn't, because late in the afternoon, a rider arrived, alone, wounded. His armor bore the insignia of the western outposts, those distant garrisons that rarely sent word and almost never sent men. He collapsed before he made it past the courtyard. You were there when they pulled the scroll from his satchel, sealed in blue wax. The symbol of the royal command burned into it like a brand. Lord Alderwick read it aloud, though his voice cracked halfway through. The message was simple. The war wasn't just at Greyline. It had spread. Other forts had fallen, one after another. The central capital, the Reach, was preparing for siege. Reinforcements weren't coming to Greyline. You were going to the Reach. Panic didn't break out. Not exactly. But the fortress shifted. Everyone could feel it. That low hum of terror just beneath the surface, like a song only dogs could hear. Soldiers moved faster, supplies were packed, banners restitched. The fortress wasn't being rebuilt anymore, it was being abandoned. You were part of the escort squad, naturally. "Why is it always us?" Bronn grumbled as you helped load crates onto wagons. "Because we don't die," Malin answered, appearing behind a stack of hay like some smug wizard jack-in-the-box. The march began before sunrise 2 days later. The sun hadn't even yawned yet when your boots touched the old stone road heading east, your bow strapped to your back, your heart somewhere between your throat and your stomach. The convoy was made of 50 soldiers, scouts, supply carriers, and one very surly cook named Fenna, who insisted her stew could knock out a bear. The road was long, uneasy, the woods too quiet, the wind too steady. You could feel it in your bones, something was watching. 3 days in, it made its move. You were setting camp near an old waystone when the first scream rang out. Not a war cry, a real scream, raw, high, final. You were on your feet before the sound even ended. Bandits. No, worse, marauders, ex-soldiers, deserters, men who'd seen war and decided they liked it better lawless. They weren't here to steal food, they wanted blood. The fight was a blur. Arrows flew, steel clashed. Fire from Malin's hands lit up the trees like festival lanterns. You fought like something ancient, fast, precise, deadly. Elric beside you, his bow singing. Bronn with an axe now, where he got it, you didn't ask. When it ended, the convoy had lost 7, but the rest lived. And the marauders, they didn't get back up. That night, you sat beside the fire again, not laughing. No stories, just the sound of breathing and quiet chewing. Fenna's stew helped a little. Before you slept, Malin handed you a small vial, glowing faintly blue. For tomorrow, he said. You didn't ask what it did. You just put it in your pouch, because you were starting to understand something terrible and true. This war wasn't going to end at Greyline, and you might not live to see the end of it. The road to the Reach was a ribbon of dust and dread, stretching endlessly through scorched fields and abandoned villages. Each step forward felt like a gamble, the horizon offering no promises, only the certainty of more blood, more fire, more war. You marched with your unit, the weight of your bow a familiar burden, the silence between comrades louder than any battle cry. Elric, his arms still bandaged, walked beside you, his eyes scanning the tree line with a soldier's vigilance. Malin, ever the enigma, trailed slightly behind, his fingers twitching with arcane energy, ready to unleash destruction at a moment's notice. Bronn, uncharacteristically quiet, gripped his axe with white-knuckled intensity, his usual jests swallowed by the oppressive atmosphere. The landscape bore the scars of conflict. Charred remains of homes, fields salted to prevent regrowth, and the occasional carcass of livestock left to rot as a grim warning. The enemy had employed a scorched earth policy, leaving nothing of value behind, ensuring that any who followed would find only desolation. As dusk approached, the convoy halted near a dilapidated watchtower, its silhouette jagged against the fading light. Scouts reported no immediate threats, but the decision was made to fortify the position for the night. You and Elric took first watch, the stillness of the evening broken only by the distant hoot of an owl and the occasional rustle of leaves. Suddenly, a faint tremor vibrated through the ground, subtle yet unmistakable. You exchanged a glance with Elric, both of you instantly alert. The tremor grew stronger, accompanied by a low, guttural rumble. From the shadows emerged a monstrous siege tower, its wooden frame groaning under its own weight, wheels crushing the earth beneath. Flanking it were ranks of enemy soldiers, their armor catching the moonlight in a sinister gleam. The alarm was raised, and chaos erupted. Arrows flew, spells ignited the night, and the clash of steel rang out as the enemy descended upon the camp. You loosed arrow after arrow, each finding its mark, but the tide seemed endless. Malin unleashed a torrent of fire, engulfing the base of the siege tower, causing it to shudder and collapse in a cascade of flames and splinters. Despite the ferocity of your defense, the enemy's numbers were overwhelming. One by one, your comrades fell. Bronn, his axe buried in an enemy's skull, was pierced by multiple spears. Elric, attempting to shield a wounded soldier, took a fatal blow to the chest. Malin, chanting a final incantation, unleashed a blinding explosion that decimated a swath of foes before he too was struck down. In the aftermath, you stood amidst the carnage, bloodied and breathless, like the sole survivor of your unit. The enemy had retreated, their losses significant, but the cost to your side was immeasurable. You buried your comrades beneath the watchtower, marking their graves with stones and whispered prayers. Alone, you continued toward the Reach, each step a testament to the fallen, each breath a vow to see the war's end. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and despair, but you pressed on, driven by duty, by memory, and by the hope that one day peace might return to the land. The road to the Reach was a ribbon of dust and dread, stretching endlessly through scorched fields and abandoned villages. Each step forward felt like a gamble, the horizon offering no promises, only the certainty of more blood, more fire, more war. You marched with your unit, the weight of your bow a familiar burden, the silence between comrades louder than any battle cry. Elric, his arms still bandaged, walked beside you, his eyes scanning the tree line with a soldier's vigilance. Malin, ever the enigma, trailed slightly behind, his fingers twitching with arcane energy, ready to unleash destruction at a moment's notice. Braun, uncharacteristically quiet, gripped his axe with white-knuckled intensity, his usual jests swallowed by the oppressive atmosphere. The landscape bore the scars of conflict, charred remains of homes, fields salted to prevent regrowth, and the occasional carcass of livestock left to rot as a grim warning. The enemy had employed a scorched earth policy, leaving nothing of value behind, ensuring that any who followed would find only desolation. As dusk approached, the convoy halted near a dilapidated watchtower, its silhouette jagged against the fading light. Scouts reported no immediate threats, but the decision was made to fortify the position for the night. You and Elric took first watch, the stillness of the evening broken only by the distant hoot of an owl and the occasional rustle of leaves. Suddenly, a faint tremor vibrated through the ground, subtle yet unmistakable. You exchanged a glance with Elric, both of you instantly alert. The tremor grew stronger, accompanied by a low, guttural rumble. From the shadows emerged a monstrous siege tower, its wooden frame groaning under its own weight, wheels crushing the earth beneath. Flanking it were ranks of enemy soldiers, their armor catching the moonlight in a sinister gleam. The alarm was raised and chaos erupted. Arrows flew, spells ignited the night, and the clash of steel rang out as the enemy descended upon the camp. You loosed arrow after arrow, each finding its mark, but the tide seemed endless. Malin unleashed a torrent of fire, engulfing the base of the siege tower, causing it to shudder and collapse in a cascade of flames and splinters. Despite the ferocity of your defense, the enemy's numbers were overwhelming. One by one, your comrades fell. Braun, his axe buried in an enemy's skull, was pierced by multiple spears. Elric, attempting to shield a wounded soldier, took a fatal blow to the chest. Malin, chanting a final incantation, unleashed a blinding explosion that decimated a swath of foes before he too was struck down. In the aftermath, you stood amidst the carnage, bloodied and breathless, the sole survivor of your unit. The enemy had retreated, their losses significant, but the cost to your side was immeasurable. You buried your comrades beneath the watchtower, marking their graves with stones and whispered prayers. Alone, you continued toward the Reach, each step a testament to the fallen, each breath a vow to see the war's end. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and despair, but you pressed on, driven by duty, by memory, and by the hope that, one day, peace might return to the land. The road to the Reach was a ribbon of dust and dread, stretching endlessly through scorched fields and abandoned villages. Each step forward felt like a gamble, the horizon offering no promises, only the certainty of more blood, more fire, more war. You marched with your unit, the weight of your bow a familiar burden, the silence between comrades louder than any battle cry. Elric, his arms still bandaged, walked beside you, his eyes scanning the tree line with a soldier's vigilance. Malin, ever the enigma, trailed slightly behind, his fingers twitching with arcane energy, ready to unleash destruction at a moment's notice. Braun, uncharacteristically quiet, gripped his axe with white-knuckled intensity, his usual jests swallowed by the oppressive atmosphere. The landscape bore the scars of conflict. Charred remains of homes, fields salted to prevent regrowth, and the occasional carcass of livestock left to rot as a grim warning. The enemy had employed a scorched earth policy, leaving nothing of value behind, ensuring that any who followed would find only desolation. As dusk approached, the convoy halted near a dilapidated watchtower, its silhouette jagged against the fading light. Scouts reported no immediate threats, but the decision was made to fortify the position for the night. You and Elric took first watch, the stillness of the evening broken only by the distant hoot of an owl and the occasional rustle of leaves. Suddenly, a faint tremor vibrated through the ground, subtle yet unmistakable. You exchanged a glance with Elric, both of you instantly alert. The tremor grew stronger, accompanied by a low, guttural rumble. From the shadows emerged a monstrous siege tower, its wooden frame groaning under its own weight, wheels crushing the earth beneath. Flanking it were ranks of enemy soldiers, their armor catching the moonlight in a sinister gleam. The alarm was raised, and chaos erupted. Arrows flew, spells ignited the night, and the clash of steel rang out as the enemy descended upon the camp. You loosed arrow after arrow, each finding its mark, but the tide seemed endless. Malin unleashed a torrent of fire, engulfing the base of the siege tower, causing it to shudder and collapse in a cascade of flames and splinters. Despite the ferocity of your defense, the enemy's numbers were overwhelming. One by one, your comrades fell. Bronn, his axe buried in an enemy's skull, was pierced by multiple spears. Elric, attempting to shield a wounded soldier, took a fatal blow to the chest. Malin, chanting a final incantation, unleashed a blinding explosion that decimated a swath of foes before he too was struck down. In the aftermath, you stood amidst the carnage, bloodied and breathless, the sole survivor of your unit. The enemy had retreated, their losses significant, but the cost to your side was immeasurable. You buried your comrades beneath the watchtower, marking their graves with stones and whispered prayers. Alone, you continued toward the Reach, each step a testament to the fallen, each breath a vow to see the war's end. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and despair, but you pressed on, driven by duty, by memory, and by the hope that one day peace might return to the land. The Reach came into view at dawn, just a silhouette at first, a dark crown rising out of the mist. Its towers pierced the sky, stained with soot and shadow, and the walls stretched for miles, vast and scarred like an old beast that had seen too many wars. You paused on the ridge, breath catching not from the climb, but from the sheer sight of it. You had made it, alone, battered, but here. Your boots crunched on the gravel path as you made your descent, and the wind howled against your cloak like it was trying to pull you back. The road was lined with wreckage, broken carts, abandoned tents, bones, a silent archive of failed attempts. Yet you pushed forward. By the time you reached the gate, the sun had risen high enough to burn through the haze. Guards shouted down from above, crossbows aimed squarely at your chest. You raised your arms slowly and shouted your name, your rank, your origin. They took a long time to respond. When the gate finally opened, the stench hit you first. Sweat, iron, oil, desperation. Inside, the Reach wasn't the shining heart of the realm you'd been promised in stories. It was a war machine on the brink of collapse. Soldiers half-dressed, medics scrambling, fires burning in places they shouldn't. This wasn't a city, it was a last stand. A captain met you at the threshold, a woman named Vetra, whose face looked like it hadn't smiled since the last peace treaty. She scanned your bruises, your blood-caked armor, and said simply, "Follow me." She led you through winding corridors of tents and rubble, past crying children and muttering priests. Every inch of the capital had been converted into a fortress. Even the temples were packed with crates of arrows and wounded men. You passed one building where the sound of weeping cut through your core, a field hospital. You didn't ask to go inside. You'd seen enough dying. Finally, Vetra stopped outside a tower, still intact, barely. "Command is up there," she said. "They'll want to know what's left of Greyline." You nodded and climbed the stairs alone. Inside, a war council gathered around a map so stained and torn it barely held together. They looked up when you entered, 5 men and women, all older, all weary. At the head sat Lord Kale. His armor was dull, his hair white, but his eyes burned with the same fire you saw in Alderwick back at Greyline. "Report," he said. You told them everything about the siege, the towers, the sacrifice of Malin, Elric, Bronn, about the bandits, the rider with the sealed letter about Greyline's fall and the caravan's death. No one interrupted. When you finished, silence settled like dust. Then Kale spoke. "You're the only one to make it." The words hit harder than any sword. Vetra appeared at your side again. "We'll get you a bed, food, rest." You followed her to the barracks, where straw mats served as beds and broth as meals. But you were grateful, more than grateful. You hadn't felt safe in weeks. You hadn't felt seen. That night, you didn't sleep. You stared at the rafters, hearing phantom screams and the crunch of snow under fleeing boots. You saw Malin's last spell, Bronn's bloodied axe, Elric, shield raised, eyes locked on yours. At dawn, Vetra woke you. "They want you in the North Tower. Now." The North Tower was different. No chaos, no medics. Just silence. And there, laid across a stone table, was a map. Bigger than any you'd seen, with every fort, every road, every known enemy camp marked. Kale stood there alone. "We need you," he said. "You know the terrain. You've seen what we're up against, and we don't have time to train scouts." You stared at the map, at the paths you'd already walked, then at the ones yet to be carved. "You're asking me to lead." "I'm telling you," he said. "You're already leading. You just haven't admitted it." You didn't answer. You didn't need to. happy because deep down you knew the war wasn't over and your part in it had just begun. The Reach stood before you, not as the verdant paradise of legend, but as a fortress bracing for its final stand. The once lush fields were now trampled battlegrounds, and the air hung heavy with the scent of smoke and anticipation. Within its walls, the city pulsed with a tense energy, every citizen and soldier moving with purpose, preparing for the storm that loomed on the horizon. You had been appointed as the lead scout, a role that demanded both precision and courage. Each day you ventured beyond the safety of the walls, navigating through the remnants of villages and forests now claimed by the enemy. Your reports became the lifeblood of the city's defense, guiding strategic decisions and bolstering the morale of those who clung to hope. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, you returned with news that quickened the pulse of every commander. The enemy was mobilizing, their forces converging with an urgency that spoke of an imminent assault. The city braced itself, the final preparations unfolding with a grim determination. The siege began under the cover of darkness. The enemy's siege engines roared to life, hurling projectiles that shook the very foundations of the Reach. Flames licked the night sky as buildings ignited, and the cries of the wounded pierced the cacophony of battle. Yet, amidst the chaos, the defenders held their ground, their resolve unyielding. Days blurred into nights, the siege relentless. Supplies dwindled, and exhaustion etched lines into every face. But surrender was not an option. In the heart of the city, a council convened, strategizing with a desperation that birthed innovation. You proposed a daring plan, a covert operation to disrupt the enemy's supply lines, a maneuver that could tilt the scales. Under the cloak of night, you led a small unit beyond the walls, navigating through hidden paths and treacherous terrain. The mission was perilous, but success meant survival. With precision and stealth, your team struck the enemy's supply convoys, sowing confusion and hindering their advance. The operation breathed new life into the city's defense, a testament to the power of audacity. As the siege wore on, the enemy's momentum waned. Their assaults grew less coordinated, their morale fraying. Sensing an opportunity, the city's leaders orchestrated a counteroffensive, rallying every able-bodied individual to reclaim the initiative. You stood at the forefront, leading the charge with a fervor fueled by the memory of those lost and the hope of a future reclaimed. The battle was fierce, but the tide turned. The enemy, beleaguered and disoriented, began to retreat. Cheers erupted within the city as the realization dawned: the Reach had withstood the storm. The siege was broken, the city scarred but unbowed. In the aftermath, as the city began to heal, you found yourself reflecting on the journey, the trials endured, the sacrifices made, and the resilience discovered. The Reach had not only survived, it had emerged stronger, a beacon of hope in a world shadowed by conflict. Your role evolved from scout to symbol, a living testament to the courage and unity that had defied the odds. And as you stood atop the city's walls, gazing at the horizon, you knew that while battles would continue, the Reach would endure, its spirit unbreakable. The Reach had survived the siege, but the scars ran deep. The once vibrant city now bore the weight of loss and the burden of rebuilding. Streets that had echoed with the clamor of battle were now silent, save for the distant hammering of carpenters and the murmured prayers of the grieving. You, once a scout navigating treacherous terrains, now found yourself amidst the ruins, tasked with aiding in the city's restoration. The transition from warrior to builder was jarring, but purpose anchored you. Each stone laid, each wall erected was a testament to resilience, a defiance against the destruction that had threatened to consume everything. In the heart of the city, the council convened daily, strategizing not for war, but for renewal. Lord Kale, his visage etched with fatigue, presided over these meetings, his voice steady, guiding the city's future. Vetra, ever vigilant, coordinated the defense, ensuring that while the city healed, it remained protected. Amidst the rebuilding, stories of heroism emerged. Tales of Malin's final spell, Bronn's unwavering defense, and Elric's sacrifice became legends, their names etched into the city's lore. Memorials were erected, not grandiose, but heartfelt, simple stones bearing names, surrounded by flowers and tokens left by the grateful. Yet peace was fragile. Beyond the city's walls, remnants of the enemy lingered, regrouping in the shadows. Scouts reported sightings of unfamiliar banners and whispered of a new leader rising, one whose ambition rivaled that of any before. The war was not over. It had merely shifted. Recognizing the looming threat, the council turned to you. Your knowledge of the land, your experience in warfare, and your unwavering resolve made you the ideal candidate to lead a new initiative, to seek alliances, gather intelligence, and prepare for the battles yet to come. Your journey took you through devastated villages and dense forests, across rivers swollen from recent rains. In each settlement, you listened to tales of hardship, offered aid, and rallied support. Some joined willingly, inspired by the Reach's resilience. Others needed persuasion, reminded of the consequences of division. In the mountains, you encountered a reclusive clan, known for their formidable warriors and ancient traditions. Earning their trust required more than diplomacy. It demanded respect, understanding, and a demonstration of shared purpose. Through shared meals, stories, and a mutual commitment to protect the realm, an alliance was forged. As weeks turned into months, a coalition formed, a tapestry of cultures, skills, and strengths united by a common goal. Training camps were established, strategies devised, and a network of communications set in place. The realm, once fragmented, began to coalesce, preparing for the storm on the horizon. Returning to the Reach, you found the city transformed. Rebuilt structures stood tall, markets buzzed with activity, and laughter once again echoed through the streets. Yet, beneath the surface, a steely determination persisted, a collective readiness for the challenges ahead. In the council chamber, maps were unfurled and plans laid out. The enemy's movements had been tracked, their intentions deciphered. The time for defense had passed. It was now the moment to take the initiative. As you stood before the assembled leaders outlining the strategy, a sense of unity prevailed. The battles to come would be arduous, the cost significant, but the realm stood together, fortified by shared purpose and unyielding spirit. The journey from scout to leader had been unforeseen, shaped by circumstance and necessity. Yet as you looked upon the faces of those ready to follow, to fight, and to rebuild, you understood that destiny was not a path chosen, but one forged through action, sacrifice, and unwavering resolve. The Reach had withstood the siege, but the scars ran deep. The once vibrant city now bore the weight of loss and the burden of rebuilding. Streets that had echoed with the clamor of battle were now silent, save for the distant hammering of carpenters and the murmured prayers of the grieving. You, once a scout navigating treacherous terrains, now found yourself amidst the ruins, tasked with aiding in the city's restoration. The transition from warrior to builder was jarring, but purpose anchored you. Each stone laid, each wall erected was a testament to resilience, a defiance against the destruction that had threatened to consume everything. In the heart of the city, the council convened daily, strategizing not for war, but for renewal. Lord Kale, his visage etched with fatigue, presided over these meetings, his voice steady, guiding the city's future. Vetra, ever vigilant, coordinated the defense, ensuring that while the city healed, it remained protected. Amidst the rebuilding, stories of heroism emerged. Tales of Malin's final spell, Bronn's unwavering defense, and Elric's sacrifice became legends, their names etched into the city's lore. Memorials were erected, not grandiose, but heartfelt. Simple stones bearing names, surrounded by flowers and tokens left by the grateful. Yet peace was fragile. Beyond the city's walls, remnants of the enemy lingered, regrouping in the shadows. Scouts reported sightings of unfamiliar banners and whispered of a new leader rising, one whose ambition rivaled that of any before. The war was not over, it had merely shifted. Recognizing the looming threat, the council turned to you. Your knowledge of the land, your experience in warfare, and your unwavering resolve made you the ideal candidate to lead a new initiative, to seek alliances, gather intelligence, and prepare for the battles yet to come. Your journey took you through devastated villages and dense forests, across rivers swollen from recent rains. In each settlement, you listened to tales of hardship, offered aid, and rallied support. Some joined willingly, inspired by the Reach's resilience. Others needed persuasion, reminded of the consequences of division. In the mountains, you encountered a reclusive clan known for their formidable warriors and ancient traditions. Earning their trust required more than diplomacy. It demanded respect, understanding, and a demonstration of shared purpose. Through shared meals, stories, and a mutual commitment to protect the realm, an alliance was forged. As weeks turned into months, a coalition formed, a tapestry of cultures, skills, and strengths united by a common goal. Training camps were established, strategies devised, and a network of communication set in place. The realm, once fragmented, began to coalesce, preparing for the storm on the horizon. Returning to the Reach, you found the city transformed. Rebuilt structures stood tall, markets buzzed with activity, and laughter once again echoed through the streets. Yet, beneath the surface, a steely determination persisted, a collective readiness for the challenges ahead. In the council chamber, maps were unfurled and plans laid out. The enemy's movements had been tracked, their intentions deciphered. The time for defense had passed. It was now the moment to take the initiative. As you stood before the assembled leaders outlining the strategy, a sense of unity prevailed. The battles to come would be arduous, the cost significant, but the realm stood together, fortified by shared purpose and unyielding spirit. The journey from scout to leader had been unforeseen, shaped by circumstance and necessity. Yet, as you looked upon the faces of those ready to follow, to fight and to rebuild, you understood that destiny was not a path chosen, but one forged through action, sacrifice, and unwavering resolve. The Reach stood resilient, its walls bearing the fresh scars of battle and the indomitable spirit of its people. The siege had been lifted, but the echoes of war lingered in every crevice, every shadow. The city, once a beacon of hope, now faced the daunting task of rebuilding, not just its structures, but its soul. You, once a scout navigating treacherous terrains, now found yourself amidst the ruins, tasked with aiding in the city's restoration. The transition from warrior to builder was jarring, but purpose anchored you. Each stone laid, each wall erected was a testament to resilience, a defiance against the destruction that had threatened to consume everything. In the heart of the city, the council convened daily, strategizing not for war, but for renewal. Lord Kale, his visage etched with fatigue, presided over these meetings, his voice steady, guiding the city's future. Vitra, ever vigilant, coordinated the defense, ensuring that while the city healed, it remained protected. Amidst the rebuilding, stories of heroism emerged. Tales of Malin's final spell, Bronn's unwavering defense, and Elric's sacrifice became legends, their names etched into the city's lore. Memorials were erected, not grandiose but heartfelt, simple stones bearing names, surrounded by flowers and tokens left by the grateful. Yet peace was fragile. Beyond the city's walls, remnants of the enemy lingered, regrouping in the shadows. Scouts reported sightings of unfamiliar banners and whispered of a new leader rising, one whose ambition rivaled that of any before. The war was not over, it had merely shifted. Recognizing the looming threat, the council turned to you. Your knowledge of the land, your experience in warfare, and your unwavering resolve made you the ideal candidate to lead a new initiative, to seek alliances, gather intelligence, and prepare for the battles yet to come. Your journey took you through devastated villages and dense forests across rivers swollen from recent rains. In each settlement, you listened to tales of hardship, offered aid, and rallied support. Some joined willingly, inspired by the Reach's resilience. Others needed persuasion, reminded of the consequences of division. In the mountains, you encountered a reclusive clan known for their formidable warriors and ancient traditions. Earning their trust required more than diplomacy. It demanded respect, understanding, and a demonstration of shared purpose. Through shared meals, stories, and a mutual commitment to protect the realm, an alliance was forged. As weeks turned into months, a coalition formed, a tapestry of cultures, skills, and strengths united by a common goal. Training camps were established, strategies devised, and a network of communications set in place. The realm, once fragmented, began to coalesce, preparing for the storm on the horizon. Returning to the Reach, you found the city transformed. Rebuilt structures stood tall, markets buzzed with activity, and laughter once again echoed through the streets. Yet, beneath the surface, a steely determination persisted, a collective readiness for the challenges ahead. In the council chamber, maps were unfurled and plans laid out. The enemy's movements had been tracked, their intentions deciphered. The time for defense had passed. It was now the moment to take the initiative. As you stood before the assembled leaders, outlining the strategy, a sense of unity prevailed. The battles to come would be arduous, the costs significant, but the realm stood together, fortified by shared purpose and unyielding spirit. The journey from scout to leader had been unforeseen, shaped by circumstance and necessity. Yet, as you looked upon the faces of those ready to follow, to fight, and to rebuild, you understood that destiny was not a path chosen, but one forged through action, sacrifice, and unwavering resolve. And there you have it, another chapter carved from the ashes of battle and the heartbeat of resilience. If this story stirred something in you, made you feel like you were marching alongside our heroes or holding your breath at the gates of the Reach, then don't keep that feeling to yourself. Leave us a comment below. Tell us where you're watching from or what moment hit you the hardest. We read every word, seriously, everyone. And your thoughts help shape the next journey we take together. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's free, and it lets you know when the next tale drops. Because trust me, we've got more stories full of fire, fate, and fearless souls coming your way. So don't miss it. Until then, rest well, dream of distant kingdoms and whispered legends, and remember, even the smallest voice can echo through the ages. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time in the next story. Good night, brave soul.